Paulina Gaitan's flashlight blinked twice, then went dark, leaving her alone in the freezing water, 100 feet below the surface. It was supposed to be a quick adventure. On the morning of November 12, 2017, Paulina, just 15 years old, joined a group of local friends for an impromptu exploration of a cave system near their rural town in Oaxaca, Mexico. Known as Las Grutas de San Gabriel, the caves were a popular spot for locals and amateur spelunkers. Carved out by underground rivers, the system was vast, twisting, and unpredictable. Paulina had been inside the caves a few times before, but that day, heavy rains were forecasted. In hindsight, some would question why the group didn't turn back. But when they descended into the narrow cave entrance around noon, the skies were still clear. There were 7 of them altogether, aged between 14 and 18. Most carried cheap flashlights with weak batteries, no one had a map. They weren't seasoned cavers. They weren't prepared for what was about to happen. Once underground, the group ventured further into the twisting passages. Cramped tunnels opened into grand caverns, where limestone formations glistened in the pale glow of their flashlights. For hours, they climbed, crawled, and laughed, oblivious to the storm slowly brewing above. By late afternoon, the first sign of trouble arrived. A distant rushing sound echoed faintly through the tunnels. Some thought it was wind. Others joked nervously about haunted caves. But as they moved back toward the entrance, the sound grew louder. Then, they saw it, water. It wasn't a trickle, but a wall, surging through the tunnels with terrifying speed. Rainfall from the storm above had poured into the cave system, forcing entire sections to flood in minutes. The group panicked. They splintered, scattering down different passages as the flood rushed toward them. Paulina was separated from her friends almost immediately. She ran blindly, water lapping at her ankles, then her knees. Eventually, the tunnel she was in sloped downward, funneling her deeper into the labyrinth. No matter how fast she moved, the water moved faster. Within minutes, the flood had swallowed the tunnel completely. Paulina clung to a jagged rock, gasping for air, as the water rose around her. When her flashlight failed, she was left in total darkness. Above ground, the storm raged for hours. Rescue efforts were delayed, the roads leading to the caves were cut off by landslides. By the time help arrived the next morning, all anyone knew was that 7 local teenagers had entered the caves. None had come out. Underground, Paulina was fighting to survive. Trapped in a tight chamber, the rising water forced her to wedge herself onto a narrow rock ledge near the ceiling. The air was cool and sharp, made thinner by the humid, waterlogged atmosphere. Every muscle in her body ached from clinging to the ledge. Her clothes were soaked. The only sound was the relentless gurgle of rushing water and her own ragged breathing. For hours, she waited, alone. As night gave way to morning, the floodwaters started to recede. But Paulina's ordeal was far from over. The freezing temperature of the cave had left her fingers stiff and numb. Hunger clawed at her stomach. Her whole body trembled with exhaustion. By now, she realized her survival depended on one decision, whether to stay put and hope for rescue, or venture deeper into the unknown in search of a way out. Paulina chose to move. The narrow tunnels were slick with mud, making every step treacherous. Sharp rocks cut at her hands and knees as she crawled through passageways that, at times, were barely wide enough to fit her body. Her sense of time dissolved. She didn't know if she'd been moving for hours or minutes. The only thing driving her was the hope that, at some point, it would end. Above ground, rescue teams were working into their second day. Local volunteers and specialized cave divers scoured the flooded passages. But the network of tunnels was vast and unmapped. By afternoon, the first body was discovered. A 16-year-old boy, one of Paulina's friends, had drowned in one of the lower chambers. For those on the surface, the mood turned grim. The odds of finding the remaining teenagers alive seemed slim. But Paulina didn't know that. She was still crawling, still pushing forward. By now, her fingernails were chipped and bloody. Her voice was hoarse from shouting for help. And then, she saw it. A faint glow ahead. It wasn't sunlight, but it was light. A reflection from someone's waterproof headlamp. She screamed. The sound carried through the cave, reaching the ears of a rescue diver just 30 feet away. When he turned the corner, their eyes met. Paulina collapsed in relief. She had been underground for 19 hours. She was severely dehydrated, hypothermic, and barely able to stand. But she was alive. The rescuers helped her to the surface, where a crowd had gathered, villagers, family members, friends. Some cried. Some prayed. But many were simply stunned. Of the 7 teenagers who entered the cave, Paulina was the only survivor. Over the following days, questions lingered. Why had she been the only one to make it out? Locals whispered about divine intervention. Some said the Virgin of Guadalupe had protected her, citing rumors that Paulina prayed during the night. Others pointed to her resilience and survival instincts. Paulina herself gave few interviews. She refused to speak publicly about what she endured in those 19 hours. In the small town of Oaxaca, where she lived, she became somewhat of a reluctant figure, a girl forced to live with a trauma she never sought. The Cave of Las Grutas de San Gabriel is still accessible. But the events of November 2017 have kept many locals away. Paulina has never returned.